Hello. Thank you for joining us. I'm about to interview Christi, a friend of mine, who I met online when I was asked to speak to an EDS group in Jacksonville, US. And EDS, as you may well know, stands for Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, one of the conditions I have, and clearly Christi does as well. It's one of the rare diseases, and this interview is for Rare Disease Day Extravaganza on my Facebook page. But Christi has more than one rare condition, don't you?
Yes, I do. I first want to say thank you so much. I had so much support in Jacksonville in their Ehlers-Danlos group and learned so much when I was living there. And then that's how I learned about your book. And then that's how all of this has started. I actually have been diagnosed with quite a few conditions. And it's interesting because how I got my Ehlers-Danlos diagnosis was by getting diagnosed first with a even more rare disease. So in May of 2023, hundreds of painful lipomas had appeared in all of my fatty tissue. I was telling doctors that the lipomas hurt, and they were telling me lipomas don't hurt. And I got to the point where I mentally couldn't handle it anymore. And May 9th of 2023, I flew out to see Dr. Karen Erbst in Arizona, who diagnosed me with Derkham's disease, which is a rare, extremely painful adipofascial tissue disease that is a loose connective tissue disorder, which led me to also my lipedema diagnosis and the lymphedema that I had acquired. And then her paperwork and diagnosis allowed me 3 months later to get into the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville to get my official hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos diagnosis. Yeah. And then the comorbidities just kept rolling. But Derkham's disease really is not very well known. It is listed as an orphan disease as well as Ehlers-Danlos. And that's kind of how this journey started almost 2 years ago, when I finally, at the age of 43, 44 years old, finally started to get answers for conditions and symptoms that I've been having since as early as I can remember as a child.
Yeah. And were you aware of the use of the zebra as a mascot, as it were, for rare diseases and particularly for EDS?
I wasn't. I figured out through social media when these symptoms appeared in January, February, the lipomas, because the lipomas are really what led me to Ehlers-Danlos. Through research of my own on social media and accounts of people and their stories, that's when I started to look into Ehlers-Danlos too. And then I saw they were zebras. I had no idea what a zebra even meant in the medical community before that, no.
But you do now.
I do.
I know. You might have people watching who haven't got a clue what we're talking about. What's zebra got to do with rare diseases?
So when you hear hoofbeats is the saying, you don't expect to see a zebra. So in the medical community for doctors, they're given this quote as a way to know that they should look for common diagnosis and symptoms that they are given instead of the possibility of being rare, which, as we know, looking back at my medical history, it was, once I put those pieces together, it was pretty obvious. Yeah. It's a multi, as well as Derkham's disease. I mean, these are all lipedema. These are all connective tissue disease disorders I have, by the way, which are, when I saw Dr. Karen Erbst believes that these are all linked. And it's just interesting that as a zebra, it's not just EDS patients.
No.
There are other diseases that are rare as well. Rare.
Colors, I think, come in as well.
Yep.
I actually checked that with, I did a talk for the medical faculty, the School of Medicine at the University of Leeds, which I was very proud to be allowed to do, actually, because I expected them to be defensive. In fact, the opposite was true. But I asked them outright, is it true that doctors are taught that when you hear hooves, think horses? And they are, that they acknowledge that. They said yes. And I said, well, I don't in itself see a problem with that. If somebody comes to you saying, I'm hurting and I'm always tired, but I can't sleep and all that, of course you're going to say, drink more water. Do you exercise enough? Do you rest enough? Are you under particular stressors? I think that's reasonable. It's when all that fails and you start blaming the patient, that's when it's an issue, because all you're thinking of is, it should be helping. Horses should respond to that. But there are all sorts of hoof species, and maybe you should think of that.
The medical trauma that this kind of thinking that I even encounter after my diagnosis.
Yeah.
An official diagnosis.
Absolutely.
That I thought for so many years, the diets, the PTs, the surgeries, the everything I would do, or saying this medication doesn't work, etc., or that I'm having this pain, everything I said.
Yeah, but also my parents got blamed because one of the things that was wrong with me was that I didn't get enough attention as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And now my answer is, well, I didn't, because if I'd had the right medical attention, and that's without blame to the people who are there, because you can't blame them for not connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the dots with EDS was so odd. We knew that my voice, they'd never seen anything like it. They'd run doctors abroad and everything. Nobody'd ever seen anything like it. Now there's a video we found on YouTube about the voice and the throat in EDS.
Oh yes, Mayo Clinic did extensive
it's a guy in London, I think,
voice testing on me and put me in speech therapy for my.
But so that was connected to the fact that I sprained things all the time, and to the fact that I had varicose veins when I was 14 and things like that. I mean, you can't expect them to connect them.
No, I had to connect.
If somebody had done that and I'd had the correct medical care at the time, I would never have healed of EDS, but I would have had a much higher quality of life.
I think this is important because on my social media account on TikTok, one of the biggest things that these patients are saying is they're going to rheumatologists or PTs or whatever doctor, their PCMs, and they're saying, oh, you might actually have Ehlers-Danlos, but it doesn't matter. The diagnosis doesn't matter.
Yeah, you'll just have to learn to live with it.
There's nothing we can do, which is false. There is. It didn't need to get this bad.
I'm glad you mentioned your TikTok page, because I was meant to when I introduced you. Christi is very active on social media, has very many more followers than I. Go find her as the Rad Zebra on various channels, but TikTok's your strongest, isn't it?
Yes. It heals me more.
Yeah.
Oh, sometimes more, most of the time more than I feel like it's really to help people, but also, to be fair, it's a very, I've learned a lot about, I didn't know about some of my other conditions, even after my Ehlers-Danlos diagnosis, and to waste my time being gaslit anymore. I mean, that's been some of the best connection I've had as other patients, like with your book.
I was going to ask that. Did my book play a role in that? Because
I remember
when I met you, you were partway through the book, and I remember you were just so positive and so full of it, and really impressed to meet the author, which
that's perfect.
That's
us right there. Like, we fall apart.
That's right there. Anytime, anywhere.
I read your book in the bathtub because that's my favorite place to read, and the water was my favorite place. And I remember it was right. I got maybe almost halfway through it into some emotional stuff, and it impacted me so much that I had to stop reading it. It was powerful because I was also healing at the time, I mean, just a few months ago, and already realizing like, hey, once you get the diagnosis, things start to, it reminded me of my own stuff too. And it was very emotional, and I had to put it down for a couple of days, get in a better headspace, because it did touch me so much. And I love books so much that I was so excited that I even got to hear you speak, much less hear you speak and then read your words and be able to ask you, how is your son and husband doing now? Because I was very worried about them too.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful book. It's well written. I've been a fan of books my whole life. I've been called a bookworm because I love books and I love educating and I love research. And I am just impressed you even have me on here because it's a good book. I reviewed it.
And you wrote the most fantabulous review. I've got a screenshot of it and I'm using it.
I don't lie either. Like I'm very much, I can't lie very well. So I don't say things unless I mean them. I'm not going to say it if I don't mean it.
Yeah, I get that. So we do share diagnoses, but we also have very other comorbidities.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself part of the community of patients with chronic, barely visible, because, I mean, you're talking about your skin that's visible, yeah? Would you consider yourself part of the community, the chronic, barely visible, fluctuating, and rare? I think we've covered the rare.
One of the hardest parts of having a disease like Ehlers-Danlos and even Derkham's is, as you can see, right now my pain is about a 6-7. My pain is about a 6-7. But I have learned my whole life, and I look, especially now that I've learned what I have with the proper diagnosis and started treating it properly.
Yeah.
I look very well and I mask very well. I don't even know how to look sick.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. But isn't that, to your mind, a direct result of the medical gaslighting?
100%. I was praised to pull my bootstraps up. I was praised to smile and perform. I was praised to look good in public, as most young women are. I was praised to suck my stomach in. I don't know how to breathe properly right now. You know, I have a pelvic floor because my entire body has been trying to hold itself together, and we've been doing the wrong kinds of therapies.
Absolutely.
You really do start to think that you are crazy. And I was misdiagnosed with bipolar. So if I present to a doctor in the actual pain I'm in, I'm called hysterical. If I present a well-informed patient, then I am called a know-it-all, and then I don't know what I'm saying.
Yes. It's a slightly different slant to the one I take on that, but it's the same, the two extremes. If you actually look as ill as you feel and you go in complaining about, I'm so tired, I have so much pain, then it's because you're so negative.
And I'm a woman.
If you go in looking, you dress up to go to the doctor, it's the one time that you're able to get out, let's make most of it, get to the doctor's office and you're positive and then you do what you can to have a bit of quality of life, then you're imagining it or exaggerating it. It can't be that bad. I can see how you function.
It reminds me of my childhood and the undiagnosed Ehlers-Danlos, ADHD, OCD, and all of this that I was very confused. And I'm still confused when I go to doctor. Like, how do these people want me to behave at the ER? How do I behave here? It's very sick. And it is a result of years. Yeah. I've been going to the doctor since I was 5 years old, complaining of symptoms year after year after year after year.
Yep. She likes the attention.
It's absolute trauma. You can't, I mean, I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't know it was, I just thought it was me. I'm weak. I'm too fat. I'm too lazy. I just can't get it together. And I'm a woman. Oh my gosh, the pelvic and the endometriosis problems that came along with this connective tissue disorder ruined my life. It ruined my ability to have children. I was unable to conceive and put into surgical menopause, misdiagnosed as bipolar and called crazy. Yeah. And I just wanted to be a good person. They made me feel like I wasn't a good person and that my body, there was something wrong with my body and there was something wrong with my mind.
And everything that was wrong with your body was because of your mind.
100%.
It was with me. Yeah.
Right after my diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos at Mayo Clinic, I was sent to their GI department with the same GI symptoms I've had since I was, 8 years old. And he directly sent me to psych and a 3-week pain management class before testing for vascular compression syndrome, SIBO, etc., which later on we confirmed. I just made a video on my TikTok about it if you're interested.
Yeah, go have a look.
Years and years of this is documented. And I'm putting it all out there because I have nothing to lose anymore. You've called me everything else. You've called me an addict, a drug seeker,
Yeah.
lazy, fat, ugly,
Liar.
hypochondriac, hysterical.
Do you feel that that group of patients, that umbrella, those 4 terms, chronic, barely visible, fluctuating, and rare, is particularly vulnerable to that kind of treatment, to the medical gaslighting, where they get driven to actually doubt their own sanity over actually treating the symptoms?
I know it because I experienced it. I have journals and journals
Yeah.
of it. And the word that comes to mind is when I was piecing my stuff together, I kept seeing in my medical records from young age on, unremarkable, unremarkable. My scans would be unremarkable, or I felt unremarkable. I had to prove everything more than anybody else.
Yeah.
I also just shared a video about the treatment that we get as children. When I was in the 7th grade and we didn't know I had, heavy menstrual cycles and endometriosis along with adenomyosis. And I asked to go to the bathroom twice in 1 hour because I knew I had bled through and in the 7th grade, you want to cover it up. I risked getting in trouble when I came back to that classroom. I was made to stand in a corner for the rest of the hour because I disobeyed and went to the bathroom twice. It didn't stop though. They didn't even find my endometriosis and diagnose it correctly until I was almost 40 years old. It was too late to have kids. They hacked on my body and did 13 surgeries on me before we knew any of these diagnoses, even though I have years and years. It's a joint disorder, history of cervical spine, Malaysia, stress incontinence, chronic midline and low back pain. There's a whole society called the EDS Society and books that tell you as doctors what to look for here. And if you don't, as a doctor, then your responsibility should be to get us to someone who can.
When I started the Facebook page along with starting to write the book. And once I started the Facebook page and done a Facebook Live and stuff like that, I started to get messages from people with stories much like your own. And it almost stopped me from writing because my story is rather weak. I'm a bit of a wimp compared to all that. And then I thought, no. It's the fact that mine was different, and I have got the ability to write about that and raise a voice for all those people who've been treated so much worse still and who have been numbed into silence because of the shame and the guilt that you end up directing at yourself. It was the doctors who ought to have felt and probably did feel guilty and ashamed for not knowing what was really going on and projecting it onto you as a patient rather than saying, I don't know, but let's deal with what we do know together and care, and we'll see where that leads us.
On the flip side, I have had unicorn doctors, and I have been able to now, and I'm grateful, and this is why I share, because not everyone has access to this kind of care, to finally start to build at 45 years old a team of doctors that can care for my body properly.
Yeah.
To heal from years and years.
Even then, it pays to be alert. I always have this thing about don't make the new people pay the debt that the other ones caused, but equally stay alert because like you said before, even once you've got your diagnosis, you kind of think, oh, I'm rid of that now. No way are you rid of that. No way in the world are you rid of medical gaslighting once you've got diagnosis to actually explain every single symptom you've ever complained about.
I have to be super organized and super on top of it because we are so vulnerable. There's so many like quick schemes or online programs or even, oh, this place is EDS friendly or this place knows about this. And you go to a GI doctor and they say to you, you can't have endometriosis after a hysterectomy. And you're like, well, but you can. Do you really know what's going on in my GI here?
Yeah.
That's scary.
Do you feel books like Recognize Me help?
Absolutely. Some of the books there's not very many memoirs or books like yours that aren't just like, for instance, like Disjointed is an excellent book if you get diagnosed and
Absolutely.
Yeah. But books like this that touch your heart and give you the personal experience, not just these are the physical stuff, this is kind of what you do for it. This was, we share our stories and it makes you feel less alone. And that's called human connection. And that heals us because I didn't have human connection before.
Seriously?
Not real human connection, because I didn't love myself. I felt like my body was working against me my entire life and it hated me. And now I realized it was carrying me, and now I deserve to love it because there was nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken.
How did you make that switch, that mind switch?
Getting into this chronic illness community in the last 2 years and reading books like that and getting on Facebook support groups at first and now switching to TikTok, 100%.
Well, I've got a question for you. I wrote the book in English.
Yes.
That has all sorts of reasons, but it's not my native language. My native language is Dutch, and I live in Belgium now. See, I lived in England for 11 years. I did my studies for occupational therapy and worked for 5 years in the health service there, partly in psychiatry. And I did a postgrad in medical health research. So it felt easier to write it in English. I was also diagnosed with ME in that period of time. So a lot of the heavy medical gaslighting went on then.
Yes.
And also I find the English language is easier to express layers of emotion.
That's interesting to know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it had all those advantages and the one that I was going to reach a much bigger audience.
Yes.
Immediately. But I live in Belgium. My native tongue is Dutch, and a lot of people are asking for a Dutch translation. So Mum and I have started to translate the book, but there's going to be costs to publishing it. That is to say, I could do it quite cheaply.
Yes.
But then it would either take a lot longer or I'd pay on quality. And I feel this community of patients deserves the quality. Right? Now, that's why today I've launched a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah.
So do you feel that people who have read it in English or English speakers, English readers, could be motivated to either contribute to the crowdfunding itself, which has a lot of incentives attached to it. But like you say, a lot of this can be done without even spending any money at all, by sharing, by asking other people who do have the money ready to contribute to it. To speak for me, to share actions, to like and put hearts on it, and all that kind of stuff. Do you think?
I think it's interesting because most of my TikTok is from the US, but I have a lot of I consider them friends because they follow my page.
Yeah.
My friends over in England and other countries who also are zebras. I absolutely think it's amazing to put things like that out. And I think that we have issues with that because we're so used to being gaslit or being told, like, you just have so much guilt with everything.
Not worth it.
Yeah, like, am I asking people too much? Or if you're like me, I don't make any money off my TikTok or charge for anything because I feel guilty.
Yeah.
But this is also work that we put into this stuff, and it's quality work, and it's helping people, and having things available for accessibilities in other languages, or even like you move on to like, is it available for people with hearing or blindness, or you look at stuff like that, like accessibilities for this is a good.
I've been looking at audiobooks as well. I mean, there's
I think that's amazing. I think audiobooks is because a lot of us start to have issues with our vision or even holding books, and we have learned, we can listen.
Lie in bed, switch the thing on, and if you fall asleep or whatever, you just switch it back and listen again, and but I asked my followers the question, which should come first? And it was a very clear answer that the Dutch should come first.
Yes.
Before the audiobook gets done.
I'm going to see that's on my channel. I wonder how many people I have that are Dutch on there. that maybe haven't seen when I posted your book before and missed that, because we constantly have people coming on and off the page. So,
but it's kind of embarrassing when I give a talk and I give it in Dutch, because that's what we speak here. That's what we do. And then they go, so have you got a book in Dutch? No.
You're absolutely right. Like, and you given yourself time, like you wrote the book, you're doing the book releases and you're trying to get it out there and people are finally reading it. So now it's time to take it to the next step. This isn't like you're starting some small little like, oh, I'm just going to crowdfund for my little project.
No.
You wrote a very good book.
Thank you.
That people deserve to have access to, however that looks.
And it is about access. It is about access to people here.
100%. I was able to access it off Amazon and read it on my phone in the bathtub. Yay. It was easy. I like that. It's easier nowadays to get access to this information. So that's just my opinion.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Was that it?
Is there anything you'd like to add? Anything I've missed?
I think the biggest, I want to address one thing. One of the biggest things that's helped me is to get better care is finding support wherever that looks like, right? Like it's support groups, finding other people like you, having mental health providers that are listen, patient experience, but staying organized and on top of your health. I had an excellent pelvic floor therapist named Michelle, who's not my friend because I'm not her patient anymore, who helped save my life in the beginning of this. Before I knew what I had, I was desperate, didn't have the diagnosis. She was treating me. And she said a couple things to me. She knew I was a zebra. She said, you're going to have to work harder than other people. And remember, no one's going to do this for you. And also, Christi, wouldn't you just double check everybody anyway? And I was like, so now my health is my job because I'm 45. I don't think I'm going anywhere anytime soon. I don't want to live like that anymore. And now I feel part of something. I never felt like I belonged. Let me just say that too. I never quite felt right. And I was very masky into whatever situation. And now I feel like I'm finally being able to like be myself. And it's really, really beautiful and healing.
I find that a lot more as well now. Yeah.
I'm just going to share this, my little Plushy Dreadful before I go, because these are from Plushy Dreadful. This is the allergy on this one.
I want to show you one.